I literally, running out of the home office, yelled for her, Julie, I can't find either one of the stands. I need something now. How about some clay? Or I'm still looking. 1 minute later, she's taping this down. Boom, we're there. All right. So, Doug, I guess we've known each other for about 20 years, maybe, and you've come up in the publishing world as a reporter, an editor, a publisher of the only business paper in Cincinnati, and we want to hear about your exploits there, because you took it from one of the top 10% papers to literally number one out of
there were 40.
Mm-hmm. So quite an accomplishment there.
In certain categories, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you went on to be an executive of a team that had a business development, commercial real estate team, and took them to the top echelons of their world. And now you're in the world of volunteering, kind of the second career, as Peter Drucker would call it. Yeah.
Maybe even third.
Oh.
Or fourth.
Depending
on how you look at it.
Very different areas.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the thing that most impressed me about how you led, and in a way, you created a turnaround with an already successful team. The Cincinnati Business Courier was already top tier in every way, and yet there was one thing that needed to be improved to really take it to the next level. Tell me about how you did that. What happened, and who was involved, and what insights did you glean that others could leverage there?
Yeah, I think saw many of those experiences were about team, and even though it was important for me to be the defined leader, from the external perspective of community engagement and the platform and essentially that role. I couldn't do what I needed to do on the external side if it was not a team on the inside.
Yes.
So, it was heads in, hands out type leadership.
So you mean that you couldn't promote and build the company of the paper out in the community and sell more revenue, et cetera, without the team being congealed and really one.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't be both that external leader and then not run the internal side.
Sure.
As if it were just me, and so it was excellence and really people better than me selling subs, selling ads.
Yeah.
Editor of the paper, Rob Dalmar, my editor of the paper, was probably a better editor than I was. So essentially putting people in place that were better than me, and me having the confidence that they're going to make me look good in all the things that I need to do on the outside.
Yeah.
And it was as well creating that team environment, so that there was trust.
Yes.
Among the group. There was, everybody knew what their accountabilities and responsibilities were, and that's what kind of took us. That's what took us to the next level where we needed to go with the Business Courier.
Yeah, I remember a story you told me about taking surveys and rating a positive on one of 12 questions or so, and one of the questions you had a challenge with was, and these are all questions that qualify a well-managed or well-running team. And one of the questions was, do you have a best friend at work? And that's where you didn't have many yeses on that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That was in a journalism environment. That best friend word tripped a lot of these folks up, because you get into journalism because you're going to conquer the world, you're going to tell the truth, you're going to be a savior, you're going to right the wrongs of the world, and so so it wasn't all that important for people to feel like they had a best friend in that environment.
Right.
Now the counter to that was, the word that tripped most people up was best.
Yes.
There was friendship, there was trust, there was camaraderie, but yeah, maybe the person's best friend wasn't at work.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, and I think in a lot of other workplaces where, maybe that is absolutely important. I know, in the commercial real estate field, I mean, it's pretty cutthroat as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I know people stayed at what was then Cassidy Turley, became Cushman & Wakefield. They stayed because of the people and because of the best friends that they had, the partners that they had, and they couldn't imagine doing that business without that partner.
So to that point, you talk about how strong the culture has to be back in the workplace in order for the leadership or others to do things out in the community and be more effective. What are some insights you gleaned from improving an already good culture? For example, whether it's at the paper or at the real estate firm, what did you do to make it better, and what worked, and what wisdom do you have that others could leverage?
Yeah, I think the kind of couple things, trust and accountability. I've already kind of talked about those things, and so it was letting those folks who are your direct reports, knowing that you trusted them to do their job, and completely trusted them. So really that.
How did you just express that?
So it's not micromanaging, but having an open and ready dialogue with them at any point in time that they needed to have your confidence and interest, but also at the same time having regular one-on-ones with them, so that and never canceling those. So no matter how busy you are, you with your direct reports, you never cancel a one-on-one.
So both serendipitous, open door, accessibility, and then as well as regularly scheduled conversations that could be completely transparent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And then that's the trust part, and then the accountability part is putting into writing. Okay, these are the expectations, and and an agreement around those expectations.
Yes.
And then constant dialogue around that. I mean the accountabilities are the script for those one-on-ones.
How many people did you have reporting to you? How frequently did you meet with them? And how long did you meet with them?
Yeah, I mean, it was half a dozen people to a dozen people, at the different organizations. Those meetings lasted from 30 to 45 minutes, sometimes. Yeah, and again, frequency was always once a week.
Yep.
And then again, any time in between, there were random conversations or pop-up conversations, those types of things. The accountabilities are. I detest the whole annual employee review process.
Yes. Amen.
And so those accountabilities, essentially, those were the script for those one-on-ones and that weekly dialogue. And if you have that open dialogue about their accountabilities, then you never have to have a quote-unquote annual performance review.
It's not a surprise.
That's correct.
But if you're talking every week for a half an hour with every one of your direct reports, 6 to 12, as you said, and frequently reviewing the contract, if you will, that you have on their role and responsibilities that directly are tying to the objectives that are key to the direction and strategy thus of the firm, it's hard to get off track.
No, that's exactly. I mean, that's the head in. Your head is in the game with everything that's going on in your business, but your hands are out. I mean, you're not micromanaging doing that business. You're trusting that your direct reports, your unit heads, your unit division heads, those folks get that work done.
Now, right there, that puts you in the top tier of leadership. Most folks don't dedicate that much focused time to be totally transparent both ways, reviewing progress on objectives and focus on their role. Now, that was a best practice, a foundational best practice for you, it sounds like. What did you do to raise the bar? What did you do when You wanted to go from the top 10 to number 1, for example. How did you really push it?
So I think it was the focus on making sure that my unit heads, department heads, were better than me. So
Yes.
making sure that I had the right people in those spots,
Yes.
and then constantly challenging the hiring of the rest of our teams at the same level. So
Yes.
essentially cascading that head in, hands out type management style to my direct reports. So they did the exact same thing with the people that
Yep.
reported to them. And
Yep.
again, we how did they best, how did my direct reports best deliver on their department's performance was essentially cascading that down so that you surround yourself with the best. So it was every time we had an opportunity to hire, it was hiring up. It was hiring, to the level, the next level, and
Somebody you could promote.
Yes, it was that kind of focus that constantly thinking, okay, we have to make our organization better, and you do that through your hiring process.
In other conversations, you've exemplified this, and you brought it up several times right here. David Ogilvy, the founder of Ogilvy Mather Advertising, said if he gave out Russian dolls to all his executives one year, and they opened them up down to the smallest doll. And inside of the smallest doll was a little note that he wrote out for all of them. It said, if you hire people smaller than you, we'll have a company of midgets. If we hire people bigger than us, we'll have a company of giants.
Yes, yes.
So you hired up. Now, in having those transparent weekly conversations, 30, 45 minutes, whatever, and allowing them to talk about anything, personal, business, but certainly focused on what their roles and responsibilities, objectives, progress on objectives were. What about the tough times where they're bringing up things that are difficult for you? What are some examples of that? I mean, that's one of the reasons people avoid that, because it creates work for them. But how did that happen for you, and how did you deal with it?
So, I think it's yes, work for them, but and difficulties. But I tried to essentially say to those folks, look, I don't have all the answers for your business, your area of responsibility.
Yeah.
I'm I'm a counselor, I'm a guider. I will help you make the decision. And so it was, got problem, come to me with the problem, but also come to me with the solution to the problem, and I'll help you work through that solution, just to make sure that you've thought about all the things that are going into your solution to the problem. And that way, I'm all the problems are not bubbling up to me in a way that I have to spend intellectual capital to try to solve those. I'm getting my people to solve those.
So you really pushed back if they brought you an issue,
right? And
you let them own it,
right? I mean,
there wasn't a lot that they dumped on.
Exactly, and when it was an issue that crossed lines that required multiple parties to be involved, you bring those parties together.
Sure.
So, I mean that is one of the things that I tried not to do was all my department heads, getting them together for quote unquote management meetings, all those kinds of, it's kind of a cluster and waste of time.
Yes.
And so do those kinds of meetings less frequently, make those stand-up meetings, check-ins, just kind of updates, very high level stuff. But then when you had a meaty issue that crossed lines, that's when you bring that group of people together. Hey, we've got a problem we have to solve because it involves several people in this organization.
Yes.
So it's more people solving those problems together is better than just people bringing those problems to me and thinking that I'm going to have the solution.
All right, next I want to ask you about fun and surprises, but hold on, let me double check this real quick, just to make sure. One of the rules of video
Yeah, you don't want to be seen having this conversation.
We didn't record a thing.
Exactly.
No, it's going strong. We got
Good.
plenty. We got the biggest hard drive we can
And
get
good
on that
juice
thing.
there, yeah. Okay.
So now you had a lot of fun at work. Tell me about some of the times you had the most fun, and perhaps how that might have tied to the culture, and ultimately one also get to your how you've touched the community, both in your business roles and currently.
So, I mean, I think the most fun, clearly we had a lot of events at the Courier that we hosted parties, celebrations of people's awards, as well as other kinds of events. And so I think, whenever those events occurred, we were all together already kind of late in the evening. And so the most fun was being able to go afterwards and celebrate, oh, what a great event, those kinds of things. The other things are just the things that bring people together in a different environment. So the bowling parties, the company picnics, the doing the
you do a lot more than average of those.
Paintball, the paintball competitions. So you take out your frustrations on your coworkers by going and shooting paintballs. So all those kinds of silly things that you just have to do those on a regular basis.
How regular?
I mean, quarterly. I mean, at a minimum. But random as well, because we didn't have bells that we would ring in the office with respect to big sales or whatever, but just being able to say, hey, let's all go down to the alley, the bar in the alley to celebrate Joe who just landed the biggest client that he's ever had. So those kinds of things.
Sure. So you're doing that every few weeks, and then you've got more formalized stuff every few months, and so there's really dozens of things that happen throughout the year that really congeal that team. As a result of them having so much more strong relationships, and overall there's an esprit de corps in the team. How did that enable you, strengthen you to reach out into the community, and what were some of your cultural objectives and social and community responsibility objectives, and thus ultimately impacts that you had in your various roles?
So I think whether it was the publishing business or the commercial real estate business, I mean we benefited by the economic vitality of our region. And so I felt that it was really, really important that we give back to the community because of that benefit. So, we couldn't do everything that people asked us to do, but trying to be strategic about a variety of areas, and as well taking into account other employees' interests. So always had an employee committee that would essentially make the decisions about, how are we going to give back to the community? What organizations are we either going to donate to or give special consideration for, whether it was discounts on advertising or discounts on helping them with their space needs at the real estate firm.
Sure.
So getting the employees involved in that in an employee committee was really, really important. And that I think is something that you're hearing more and more about these days, that rather than the CEO of a company making those kinds of decisions, they are pushing those down to employee committees. It makes it more difficult on people and fundraisers in the community, but it does make it more democratic, and more of the ground up type preferences that I believe is what our society is demanding. More inclusive. Much more spreading it across multiple interests.
So some of your favorite nonprofits and volunteer work, I know one is the Boy Scouts. Tell me about that and how you've been able to have an impact there, and maybe even how there's been a synergy of perhaps the business and the nonprofits you've worked with.
Yeah, so I mean, I was an Eagle Scout, so I had the benefit of being able to earn that, and then you know, went to journalism school to build a career. Was kind of away from scouting for a long time. Then never had the benefit of having a son, so that further separated me. So when I came back into a you know, kind of my first big leadership role in the community. Was reconnected with scouting at the board level, and that really began my general service at the board level to a number of nonprofit organizations.
Okay.
You know, scouting is one of the largest youth serving organizations in the country.
Right.
And you know, relies upon volunteers, you know, Cub Scout leaders, Den leaders, so very much a volunteer-centric organization, and teaches leadership.
Yeah.
You know, so there is and therein lies another synergy with respect to, you know, something that I know is really important to workplaces is essentially building leaders, and so scouting is synergistic with that.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like so far some of your themes that you might have picked up even in scouting is number one, communication, frequency, depth, openness, and accountability and specificity of objectives and clarity of objectives and expectations. And as long as the communication is of that level of quality, it's really quite hard to fail, whether it's in business or in the community. And so that's a way that you can translate and teach that skill by just even leading people that way. And they tend to do the same with the people they lead, and they then tend to reach out into the community.
Right.
So going forward, you know, tell me about what your vision and hope is, taking some of those pieces of wisdom you've gleaned through business life and scouts, etc.
Yeah. So
what do you hope to see in the future?
Well, I mean, the culmination of all of those things: 25 years in the media business, almost 10 years in commercial real estate, and then the volunteer experiences, you know, Rotarian, board chairs at the Boy Scouts, ESCC, the Better Business Bureau, the Visiting Nurse Association. So all of those have really culminated in the role that I'm playing now, which is solving a big crisis that's happening in Cincinnati, but it's also happening nationally.
What's that?
And that is, there are volunteerism rates across the country are declining since 2004, and now, you know, less than 1 out of every 4 adults in this country is volunteering, doing non-paid work for an organization. In Cincinnati, our rates are declining at twice the national rate. So the why is that? It may be shocking to some people. The issue is that it is harder than ever for people today to connect to the nonprofits. You may know about the biggest and the best marketing nonprofits of the world. Usually a Regions Food Bank or a Regions Ronald McDonald House.
Red Cross,
Red Cross, exactly. Boy Scouts. Those organizations very well known, but there are hundreds and thousands of organizations doing the work that needs to be doing in our community to meet community needs, and they're desperate for volunteers. And there's no easy way for those organizations to connect to volunteers. So we've created, the partner of mine, longtime Boy Scout board member, is a technology guy, sold a couple of his companies. He's created a platform to be able to make that easier. So think Yelp, think Uber, think Airbnb for volunteerism.
Yes.
And that's what I'm working on in order to kind of reverse those declines that we're experiencing. And it's technology will do, you know, 85-90% of it, and then the rest of it is a small team that essentially focuses on the volunteer ecosystem, and we're doing that here in Cincinnati, and then we can license our technology to other communities across the country. We're already doing that in Nevada and Orange County, California, and Boston, and so it has the potential to really solve, you know, not just a regional issue, but a national issue as well. And that's what I'm most excited about right now.
So it sounds like the mission is to connect the nonprofits in need of volunteers, with volunteers who want to help.
Correct.
And
where are most of the volunteers these days?
Yes.
They are in workplaces.
Well,
and so the business model, the sustainability of the organization that I'm working on, and then other organizations across the country that choose to buy into this model, is you help business people, business leaders, engage their workforce in meaningful community engagement.
How?
And how is aligning their business purpose and business mission. So,
yes.
Invariably there's places where, let's talk about Kroger, so ending world hunger and food waste is their mission.
Yeah.
And so in this community, there's 75 to 100 food banks that are trying to do that.
Yeah.
And so taking an organization like Kroger and aligning them with all of those organizations, helping them understand, okay, here's how you can help. Now, everybody doesn't have such a broad and big, hairy, audacious goal as like Kroger does.
Yeah.
But other organizations in town, businesses in town, probably have some passions around particular causes, whether it's animals, children, veterans, and essentially making the connection for them to those nonprofits in town. And we have the deep relationships with the nonprofits based on the technology and the platform that we're running to connect volunteers.
So it sounds like you're saying, for a business to be successful, and you've proven this through your experience in every role you've had, that the leadership needs to, both with the vision and mission of the organization, tie that to the reliance it has on its communities, with it, and with it, where it lives. So it's kind of like an organ on the body, if you will. And then the leadership must encourage the team to get involved.
Correct.
And very specifically, your website, which is what?
It's CincinnatiCares.org.
So right now in Cincinnati, leaders should be setting social and community responsibility objectives and make it part of the dialogue amongst the team about what are we all doing, those who can give and want to.
Right.
Here's where we can go to
CincinnatiCares.org.
And there they're going to find dozens, hundreds of opportunities.
2,000
Holy
ways for them to help. Yeah. So
wow. Just in one city.
Just in one city.
Yeah.
And then so there all kinds of ways that folks can help.
Yeah.
And that includes the simplest things to painting houses to the more complicated things, board service.
Yeah.
And that's where leaders in companies can really make an impact on our community. And then there's a thing in the middle called skills-based volunteering, which is if you have a particular skill, technology, marketing, graphics, finance, a nonprofit maybe doesn't have that kind of expertise on their board, but they could use your help in an episodic way to get something done.
The number one objection is always, we don't have the time as a company. I don't have the time as an individual. Describe how little this really takes, but in both cases, for the business to even talk about this and allow people to invest. I've seen, have experienced where CEOs I'm working with almost demand everybody give 1 out of 40 hours a week on the payroll to go back into the community. And that could be done in a couple of days directly or over the course of the year or whatever it may be, but some minimal amount of reinvestment to the community. But that's what they could do. But even individuals, how little time are we talking about? And what's
there's progressive companies that are providing 8 hours of volunteer time off a year.
Yeah.
Just 8 hours a year to every single employee to be able to go out and actualize, and you could allow your employees to do that on their own, or then you could organize it around particular causes of the business. So it doesn't take time, and we're talking about spending, you take 4 hours to do a strategic plan around this.
Yes.
And then you have an employee committee that helps essentially manage and guide it, meets quarterly, for an hour. So we're not.
And the benefits to the business are
you create that culture, you are going to attract employees.
Yes.
You create that culture, you're going to retain your workers because they have, yes, they may love your business purpose of how you make margin.
Yes.
But if you create a purpose beyond the margin, a purpose in the community,
Yes.
that gives that employee the ability to come to work and say, I'm proud to work here.
Yeah.
Not only because we make the best widgets in the world,
Yeah.
but because we care about our community and they allow me to spend time helping kids, animals, veterans, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it retains those workers. And then the triple bottom line is, we all know the stigma and the scourge of mental health these days. Every single day there's something in the news around something that is caused by someone who's had mental health issues.
Right.
You can stem mental health issues in your business
Yes.
without a single investment beyond helping people find purpose and giving them an ability to see a future that is better than what it is today for them. And so you're
As proven
improving,
by Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning and logotherapy, the most effective
thousands and
psychiatric
thousands of
treatment.
research
Yes.
and company studies that it improves health
Yes.
and well-being, and that you've got to center yourself mentally before then you can focus on your physical body
Yeah.
and other aspects of your health.
Yeah.
So it just is it's almost like, why wouldn't a business leader do this?
Right. Right. It fuels it's synergistic.
Exactly.
It comes back in spades.
Mm-hmm.
So to wrap up, what's your final exhortation to anybody who's out there, whether it's a leader or an individual on a team, the one thing that they could do that they could make the biggest difference both for their business and the community together?
I think it's got to be genuine. So and you do that. Again, back to the first thing that I said. It's about your team. It can't be top down. It's got to be bottoms up. No matter how big your organization is, getting your whole team involved in it, but then genuine. Profit motivation should clearly business is good because it creates profit that can then be reinvested in the community and in the economy. So profit is not a bad word, but it does have to be genuine in the fact that it can't be completely profit driven. But again, the team aspect of it is so important, and then just the benefits to the business is the final piece. It's that again, I've been doing this for 30 years,
Yeah.
and every step of whether it's been my nonprofit service or the for-profit work, it's always come back and benefited me and the organization that I work for.
It's hard to fail
Mhm.
if you just try.
Absolutely, and even if you do fail, failure is good. How many times do we not talk about how failure is good and focus on focus on a small amount. Don't try to boil the ocean.
Yeah.
First thing first, second things never.
Sure.
Just focus on what is the make or break.
Awesome. Thank you, Doug.
Absolutely.
Appreciate the time.
Yep.
And thanks for watching the Faust in-depth topic of creating a focus on the community back at in your business in a way that's synergistic. And it's hard to not help your fellow man and help the team on which you work with day to day. So thanks so much.
You're welcome.